knitters! Welcome to PJ Knits. My name's Penny and I live in Central Illinois, and it is a gorgeous Thursday morning outside, but it's going to get hot in the next few days, so there'll be a lot of time for inside knitting. I am Penny J on Ravelry, and I am PJ Knits on Instagram, and I have a blog which is www.pjknits.blogspot.com, where show notes, I promise, will be found later this weekend. Thanks so much for coming back, friends, Knitwit sisters, and new people who might just happen along. This is episode 7, and this is going to be called My Sweater Project. And if you've been following Ravelry groups or Instagram or YouTube videos, there's a lot of people who are knitting sweaters right now, and I am a part of several of those groups. I have sweaters in my wardrobe, but over time, a lot of them have been given away because my size has fluctuated, or perhaps the style wasn't right for me, but I went off anyway and knitted those. And so I want for this year and next year to knit sweaters, and sweaters for me and sweaters that fit. I want them to show who I am in the knitting, and I want to have them for retreats because I go to several, and I really find when I come home I feel so lacking in my sweater wardrobe. And so I'm not giving up the shawl knitting, but I really truly want to do some sweaters, and I have a lot of resources at hand that I am going to share with you and with myself to accomplish this. And first up, what I want to do is I started a theme on my blog recently about the sweater project, and every so often I'm going to be posting to the blog as well some things, but I want to just share with you some thoughts that I had a few weeks back on my sweater project. One day I put out questions that I thought that I needed to answer for myself, and maybe others might want to, play along. And so I'm just going to kind of read through some of these questions and answers for you to kind of give you all a sense of where I'm coming from. First off, what are the styles I turn to? In my regular wardrobe, t-shirts, throw them on for the weekend, or at night, comfy, cozy, loose-fitting t-shirts. For work, simple button-down cardigans that can go over a tank in the summer months and a turtleneck in the winter, and that could have a shawlette thrown over them. What styles do I look good in? Now that is a good question, isn't it? Maybe the real question is, what styles do I feel good in? I think I really need someone else to answer that question for me, because a lot of times what happens is I see, and probably you do as well, I see a style and I'm like, oh, I want to knit that. I can wear that. But the person that it's on is 5'9" and she weighs 120 and doesn't exactly conform to the 5'4" one something that I weigh. And so I'm easily led astray on my knitting sweaters to go with the flow or go with the crowd or go with what's in, instead of rather really drilling down and seeing if that really is the style for me. And sometimes your best friends, your best knitting friends, can answer that question for you. What styles do I know I do not look good in? No drop shoulders. I can't wear them. I never could. No sleeveless. No tunic lengths below the hip. The hips are the widest part of me, and I discovered from several classes that I have taken and several resources that I have that that's not a flattering style for us with large hips. They cover the hips, but I'm way too short to pull them off. What should I say is my signature style? Blue jeans and t-shirt. Casual style. Throw it on, be casual, sit around home. For work, it seems like I have been in this rut of simply throw it on and go, get to work. I work in an office. I see physicians, I see CFOs, I see staff, I see salespeople. I get by with just enough in the work environment, and it's a simple style. What items in my wardrobe are needed? I've added this to include what items in my wardrobe do I want. Refer to all the answers above and below. I want them all. Do I need sweaters for work or sweaters for the weekend or both? Yes. I want sweaters to work in. I want comfy, go to Saturday knitting sweaters, head out to the winter, into the winter, a lopey sweater that you throw over and that's your jacket. Do I want classic sweaters? Yes. I think I want a couple of those at least. What am I most comfortable right now? Sweaters that cover. And that's not necessarily the greatest answer either, but that's how I'm feeling. What would I love to be able to wear, and how can I make it something that I can wear? Let's take drop shoulders, for example. Years ago, I knit and wore all of them. Fast forward many years later, and a helpful Judy Chan from the Chicago area taught me that it wasn't a look for me. I should be knitting or wearing that. She helped me to take a drop shoulder sweater pattern, adapt it so there's no longer drop shoulders, and keep it still in the design of the sweater. It was a valuable class that I took, and I remember and use that quite often when I see a drop shoulder, that it's like, oh, I want to make that sweater. I like the design. I like the style of it. But it's got that drop shoulder that really is not good for the short person or comes right across where it shouldn't be. And taking that information, I can make sweaters that I want and look good in. It was the best money I ever spent. I went up with my friend Julie, and we traveled up there many months. And Judy was a great teacher. It was really the first resource, one of the first resources. There was a secondary resource as well, but helped me identify the sweaters and helped me make sweaters that I could wear. If I knit it, will I wear it? That should be the most important question, I think. You should ask that first before ever buying a pattern or ever choosing a sweater. Will you wear it, or are you just knitting it because it's the in thing? It's hard to make that decision. Do I love the color I have chosen? Well, it's no secret what colors I like and gravitate towards. If you know me, or if you've been around much, you know turquoise is my color. I often think, though, that I need to change up this palette. I'm really liking the bright colors these days. And I get a lot of compliments with hot pink. So perhaps I could add that a little into my knitting wardrobe. But I'm still going to be a lover of turquoise. I love wearing it. And I have things that go with it. Am I just wanting to knit it because everyone else is? I am so that person. I've told you that. I follow the crowd. And not only do I want to knit it, but the minute that pattern comes out and somebody starts knitting it, I have to buy it for my collection, as you've seen in some of my folders and some of my folders that I will show you. I have a bookcase of old knitting magazines downstairs. Last couple of weeks, I started pulling and tossing some of the older ones. But before I toss them, I go through it and make sure that there's not a classic in there or something that I just know that I will want to knit in the future, or something that I thought I'll never knit and now realize, yes, that is a style that I can knit for myself or adapt. When I look at some of those magazines and the things that I've earmarked, I think to myself, what were you thinking? There's no way you could knit those. So those are just some questions that I asked myself, and perhaps you want to ask yourself if you are indeed wanting to embark on a sweater project for the coming year. I want to share a couple of some books and things with you this morning that started me on my sweater quest many years ago. My friend Julian, like I said, talked about earlier when we went up to Chicago, we became good friends and good knitting friends, and traveled a lot to to Chicago a lot. And she bought me this book back in the day. And this is one of my first sweater books that I bought. It's called 25 Gorgeous Sweaters for the Brand New Knitter. This was a super cool book, and I still love it. And it still has some things that I think that could be pulled off for today. There's a textured vest in here. I'll show you that up close and personal that could use with many cool yarns for those that are under, and I'm sure, I don't even know if the book is still available. It's by Kathy Ham, but anyway, this was one of my first books that, knitting books that took me on a knitting journey, and one that I still like. And this particular one is called Great Tunics. I would have to do a couple of things to it, again, but easily adaptable, not make it a tunic, and it has a bit of an off the shoulder. And this is one of those that I learned in Judy Chan's class ever so long ago, that I could switch up and make to fit me. It's funny when you go back to your books and you see some things and you think, you know, that's still kind of relevant now, but just with a few changes. Then fast forward a few years later, I started going yearly to Meg Swanson's knitting camp, and I'll talk about that in the next upcoming episodes. But I had the great fortune of meeting Cheryl Oberly at one of those, and she attended for several years. And Cheryl Oberly and I still converse somewhat through social media. But Cheryl came out with a book called Knitted Jackets, and this is a well-loved book, out of print now. But I knit back in the day, back over several years, several of Cheryl's jackets from this book, and still will go back to it to knit some more. Cheryl is a great designer and a great person. She is so giving, and like I said, I've made several of these in here. Some of them, again, probably have not, would not be good for right now. The style has kind of changed a bit, but some of them certainly could be adapted to current sweaters. And so this is, like I said, a well-loved book, a book that I have still a couple of these that, again, I have adapted for me. And then there are a couple that I have given over to some other people, because one of them, I made this one in a beautiful pink, and it looked much better on somebody else as I lost a little bit of weight. And she wears it and loves it. So I wouldn't mind making this one again, just a little less wide on this one. So I love this book. Also, Cusco, I've made several of those. Loved this one as well. Cheryl Oberly, she really got me started on jackets. And these were jackets that I wore to work and I wore to events. And love the book. Like I said, a well-loved book that got me started on some of my sweater knitting adventures. A couple other books I just want to share with you, again, that were monumental. We were doing Stitches Midwest many, many, many years ago at the onset for me, and they were being held at Pheasant Run instead of Schaumburg. And one of the teachers that year that came was Jean Frost. And she, again, had some jacket books that took us on a level of, again, stylish knits that we could wear to work. I took a class from her and got to try on some of the styles that she had, but very much so sweaters that I could wear to work. And again, these are ones that I still could pull out for my current job for the winter. Jean Frost Frost jackets, fabric, fit, and finish for today's knits. And even though, if we look at the info in it, it's been a while, I guess I cannot find that readily, but anyway, some great textures, some great designs. So you can see all those. She took a lot of her inspiration, I think, from the Chanel type jackets and made it into a knitted type. Again. And then a few years later, she came out with another one, and this was custom fit knit jackets, casual to couture, casual to couture, Penny. And again, in some really, and gives you different information, schematics for each one. Just some great styles. And once again, that I can't say this enough, how these particular books could still be styles that I could wear today for my job. And I loved, it was put out by XRX Books, so it was in conjunction with all of the things that she was doing for them. This copyright was 2011. So Jean Frost, custom fit knit jackets, casual to couture. Again. Great sweaters for those of us who work in the environment but still want to say, we're a knitter. So those are some of the things that I wanted to share with you about my sweater project, some inspiration and some books that I think I might, I will go back and look at. Up first, and this is for my friend Sue, this would be the file called The Sweater Project, Spring, Summer. And here in Central Illinois, summer is in full blast, even though it's not the official summer. But this is my folder that has some patterns in it for what I'd love to knit for spring and summer. I've missed the spring part. We're now into the summer. And I'm wondering if I shouldn't be just jumping ahead to fall and winter. Could be obvious by some of the knits that I will be showing you coming up. But I've got some patterns in here. Sorry, that have possibilities for spring and summer, and I may still get them done. In fact, I'm knitting on some of those. So I have a folder, The Sweater Project, Spring, Summer, of ideas that I have already picked out that I would like to knit, and I'm trying desperately not to buy any patterns just right off the get-go, and using from my file that I've got. So those are some spring, summer sweaters that I want to knit. And so we kind of did the books thing. And in my little bag from Silver Shed USA that I bought a couple of years ago from her, this is housing all of my thoughtful sweaters, or sweaters that I may be wanting to knit on. Some a partially finished object, and I've got yarn in here for 3 sweaters. I talked about ground pepper, that one's on my list. I've got a Revive sweater that I'm looking at. This is Fine Sand. I have narrowed this one down. Fine Sand is one I'm going to cast on pretty soon, because in a week, less than a week, I will be at ZK in Rochester, and so this would be some good knitting on that. And it's going to be out of Revive that I bought at Stitches Midwest a couple of years ago. I've done a little swatch and blocked it. And in future episodes, I'm going to talk about my swatching thoughts, but I'm going to save that for down the road. But I've done a little Revive. So that is the Fine Sand. And then one that I don't have in here that I'll talk about in a few, probably in a few weeks. I've made a little swatch of some yarn that I bought down in Naples, and this is going to be just a loosey-goosey cover-up. And this one will be knitted, will be cast on pretty pretty soon too. But I have a couple of projects. I have one in particular that I would love to get done to be able to wear next week at ZK. And so then that I can really start working on those. But I think those two are going to accompany me because they're spring summer sweaters and they fit the bill for a couple of things that I want to do. So those are what, it's kind of like needle adjacent, what I'd love to be wearing down the road before the summer's over with. And again, I think something that is very doable. And then lastly, last couple of things, I just want to touch bases again back to the sweater project on these sweaters. My views for my sweater project is, again, sweaters that I can wear, that look good on me, that are me. But along the way, I'd like to learn some new things. I think no matter how many years you've been knitting, you can always learn new things. And I'm one of those people. Or there are some skills that I have, but I really want to get better at some, and I'll talk about those later in the summer as well, where I'll going forward towards fall for my knitting. New techniques I want to learn. Some different sleeve techniques. There's a lot of different sleeve techniques out there that, that are beyond the simple ones that I have been using, and I want to kind of perfect those skills. I want to do some more steeks, which again will be some late summer projects that I'm going to do. And like I said, more color work. There's lots to share about color work and some things in my library about that as well, and my directions for things that I would like to do with that. For finished projects, I have a couple. One that is that is done, needs to be blocked, and I'm just going to just show it a little bit because again, this is featherweight. And I will, in future episodes, I will have this blocked accordingly, and we'll see how this turns out. This is Three Irish Girls yarn, their sock, Springdale sock, and mohair held together. Is that not gorgeous? But not ready for wearing yet because it's not been fully blocked, and I'm hoping that it does everything I want it to do. Bought this at Stitches Midwest last year. They had a model on a display in oranges and peaches, and they had this sitting next to it, and it was mine. And it is featherweight. And again, what I've done is I've taken this pattern, which I've loved forever, and wanted to knit. But the thing that I had to do on this particular featherweight is I really had to make some alterations for this to fit me. Because as you can see, it's short. And these arms, and I've talked about this before, these arms are tight. And so what I had to do is go up on bigger needles and to get an arm that fit me well. And I knit it on a larger needle throughout the body because this is not a look. Again, this is one I know is not for me. When I have something like that and I'm walking or I'm constantly pulling it and pulling it shut, I don't want this to be the view that everybody sees. I want it to come closer. And I'm not a fan any longer of these rolled back. And so I took my cue from them and in the booth at Three Irish Girls, and I did that as a rib. I picked all the way around it, and I did that as a 1x1 rib. And I really like it. And so when I block it, it will lay down. So this is featherweight adapted for those of us who need to. Again, there are sweaters out there that I love that can be adapted to fit me. And then finally, today is my second friendship road in a darker teal. And this is just kind of a shout out to Alicia. I love this color. So I love Sean's new shirt color too. So just saying. I watched Alicia last night on Loopin' About, and if watch that podcast and you'll know what I mean. So anyway, this is my Friendship Road, and I love it. Again, out of Minnesota 52 book, and this will be going up to ZK next week with me. So I think that's all I have today for you. Knitting retreat season kicks in. Next week's ZK with my friend Debbie. A few weeks after that is knitting camp with Meg Swanson in Marshville, Wisconsin. And then early August is Stitches Midwest. Oh my gosh, it's going to be a great summer. I'm looking forward to it. And it'll be away from work. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us, me, the birds, and for tuning in. I hope that you're going to be knitting some sweaters with my sweater project. And until next time, knit on with confidence and hope. See you later. Bye. Bye.